I'm Khaled Toameh, and today I'm joined by my colleague Yoni Ben Menachem, veteran Arab affairs and Palestinian affairs analyst and reporter. And today is the day 132 of the war. Most of the news coming out is from Khan Yunis today. For those who have not been following the news, there's a major I don't even know if I'll call it major, but there is an IDF operation underway right now as we speak at Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis. According to the IDF, the operation is being carried out because of credible intelligence that some of the hostages or their corpses, their bodies, might be inside the hospital. So most of the reports are coming out of Khan Yunis. The operation is still underway, and we are waiting to see what will happen as a result of this IDF operation. Meanwhile, there's nothing new on the front regarding Rafah. There's been a lot of talk about the possibility that the IDF will go into Rafah. There are about 4 Hamas battalions in Rafah. And according to Palestinians, there are hundreds of thousands of people over there. And as I said, there's nothing new on that front. Today, we're going to be talking about what's happening in Gaza. And of course, we'll also be talking about the latest events on the northern border with Hezbollah. Yesterday was a day of an upsurge in violence in Lebanon. Today was relatively quiet, or we had less violence over there. But we will talk about all these issues. And our guest today is Major General Yaakov Amidror. He was the former National Security Advisor to the Israeli Prime Minister and chairman of Israel's National Security Council. So welcome, Major General Amidror, and thank you for joining us today. The first question I would like to ask you is about Rafah. Why do you think there's a delay? Do you think that Israel is not going to go into Rafah, the last stronghold of Hamas, because of international pressure? How do you read the situation right now regarding what's happening in Rafah and also in Gaza?
First, thank you for having me. As you know, I was a member of this institution in the past. Today, I am a member of the Jerusalem Institute for Security and Strategy and Security, and the JCPA Strategic Center in Washington, D.C. But I'm very proud to be one of the veterans of this organization that you are representing today.
Thank you very much.
I learned there a lot. Rafah is a very interesting issue. It's the last stronghold of Hamas, as you said. It is the only place that still Hamas has organized forces, 4 battalions with military capacity. It is the only place in the whole Gaza Strip, but here and there some corners, that Israel does not have and don't have control on the ground, and for sure we didn't go under the ground. And as you see from Khan Yunis, there is a lot under the ground. And the pressure of the international community, based on the fact that many Palestinians moved from north part of Gaza into the area of Rafah. They had some dreams to go into the Sinai, but the Egyptians don't let them go, and I can understand the Egyptians. So there is a concentration of almost 1 million people, according to the Palestinians, in Rafah and around Rafah. Rafah was a place in which, before the war, between 250,000 to 300. This is the number, so it is tripled itself at least. And the pressure is for the IDF and the state of Israel, don't go to operation there, because the casualties will be very, very high. I know for sure that the IDF understand the problem, and they know that they cannot fight and they don't want to fight an area with 1 billion Palestinians. But at the same time, that cannot be a reason for immunity to Hamas. That
So
will
what's
allow
the solution,
Hamas.
General Amidror? I mean, what should
I
Israel do?
I explain the problem, then I explain the solution. But and this is not a reason to give immunity to Hamas, and Israel is very determined to destroy the military capability of Hamas and not to let 4 battalions to remain afterwards as organized military force, which will be the strongest one in Gaza after the pull out of the Israeli forces. So the solution that I understand is the most logical one is to give time to the IDF to give the information where should these million people should go, as we did in the north part of Gaza. And in north part of Gaza, it took 3 weeks to evacuate almost 1 million people, probably 800,000. And at the same time, by the way, Israel evacuated all the civilians from the Israeli side, because we understand that we don't want civilians to be part of the battlefield, and they will not be in the Palestinian side and not be in the Israeli side. It will take a few weeks, really between 2 and 3, to move these people to safe havens that will be designated by Israel, mostly in the center of the Gaza Strip. And only after they will be evacuated and moved to this area, Israel will go to big operation in Gaza. It will be a big in Rafah. It will be big operation, few brigades at least, because this is the last stronghold, and we want to gain control in a rapid operation. Rapid it will not be, probably, because the underground challenge is leading to a very slow steps. But I believe that within a few days or week or 2, we will begin the efforts to move the population, to designate the safe havens, and only then the IDF will go with huge military force into the Rafah area to dismantle the 4 battalions, at least the 4 battalions, and maybe to find some of the hostages and to kill the leadership of Hamas.
Do you think?
Yep. So, go ahead.
Do you think that Israel should do the operation before Ramadan, which is on March the 10th, or it should postpone it until Ramadan is over?
I don't think that this is the most important question. What important for us is to do it. If it will be before the Ramadan or after Ramadan, it's a tactical question that I don't have an answer. It very much depends how long it will take us to mop up, to clean the area of Khan Yunis, again, on the ground and under the ground. How many forces of the IDF will be free to such an operation? It very much depends on the situation in the north and the preparations of the IDF for a war in the north. So it's a tactical question, more about logistic than about the essence of the need to gain control on Rafah on the ground and underground. That should be done before something can be done before the Ramadan. Good question, but I don't see any problem to postpone it after the Ramadan.
Because the Palestinians are saying, and also the Egyptians, that if it will happen through Ramadan, during Ramadan, this will have a very strong ramification, and it might encourage violence in East Jerusalem, in the West Bank, and so on.
We have to take it into consideration, cannot be excluded, but I don't think that this should be the reason for postponing it or to make it earlier. If will be the ability to do it, the earlier the better, but I don't see any problem to postpone it, as I said, mainly because of logistical questions.
Okay.
General Amidror, do you expect Palestinians to rush towards the border with Egypt once the IDF launches an invasion into Rafah?
No, because as I said, we will take all the steps which are needed to evacuate or to help the Palestinians to evacuate themselves from the area. So the pressure of this population will be much, much less than today. I know that the Egyptians really don't want anyone from within Gaza to move into the Sinai Peninsula. I understand why. I know that the Egyptians, to be very modest, don't like the Palestinians and afraid from Hamas, which is a military organization, belongs to the Muslim Brotherhood, which is the opposition for the previous regime in Cairo. So I understand the Egyptians, and I don't think that Israel should convince them to let Palestinians to move to Egypt. They have their own calculation, and we have to respect it. And at the same time, we have to do everything which is possible to ease the tension and the pressure and to move Palestinians from Rafah, so it will be easier for the Egyptians and easier for us.
What is your estimation? Do you think that the military command of Hamas, Yahya Sinwar, Mohammed Deif, Marwan Issa, is there a possibility that they are hiding in the tunnels under Rafah, not in Khan Yunis, and maybe also some of the Israelis hostages are being held in the Rafah area?
The truth answer, I don't know. But my assessment that it cannot be excluded. But this is not the reason that we are going to Rafah. The reason that we are going to Rafah is to dismantle and to destroy the 4 battalions there. If we will find there the leadership or hostages, it will be very, very good. But the reason to go is not connected, not to the hostages and not to Sinwar. We need to destroy the military capability of Hamas, including the 4 battalions that should not be immune, because there is a lot of population now in Rafah. Of course, the more we are cleaning the other areas, and they don't have too many options, some of them might go or had been gone to Rafah, something that we should take into consideration. But at least I don't know, but it doesn't matter. The reason we have a good reason to go to Rafah to destroy these 4 battalions without the hostages and without the leadership.
I wanted to ask you about your position regarding the Philadelphia corridor, the 14-kilometer strip between Gaza and Egypt. Do you think Israel should retain or restore security control over it?
This is a very, I understand the need. The more it will be in our hands, the more control that we have, the more flexibility that we have to act there, the easier it will be to intercept any attempt by the Palestinians to smuggle in later on. But we don't want to be responsible for Gaza, and by taking control on the Philadelphia access, you become kind of responsible for all the civilians' issues in Gaza. So here we have to balance between our will to control it, because to prevent smuggles as much as possible, and the reason that we don't want to go to, because we don't want to be responsible from the national law point of view to all the needs of the people in Gaza. So we have to balance at the end, and I'm sure that the IDF will find with the Egyptians, not against the will of the Egyptians, but with the Egyptians, a way to control it, because it's the interest of both Israel, Egypt, and the Palestinians in Gaza, not to let Hamas to rebuild its military capability.
What does
I want to say something that we are not emphasizing enough. That Hamas will be destroyed and will not have military capability in Gaza. It is the interest of the people of Gaza, not less than the people of Israel. Look at the price that they are paying of the craziness of Sinwar and his friends from the Hamas. Look how miserable life had been brought to Gaza because of the decision of Sinwar to kill as many Israelis as possible, and the atrocities that he did in 7th of October and the barbarian way that it was done. So it's the interest of the good people in Gaza that Hamas will be destroyed. Otherwise, they will have to face another destruction in the future when Hamas will try to attack Israel. So in a way, what we are doing today, fighting Hamas, destroying Hamas, dismantling its battalions, is as important for the population in Gaza as it is important for Israel.
Going back to Rafah, to Philadelphia corridor, what does exactly the security protocol between Israel and Egypt said? Does we have to coordinate our military operation with the Egyptian?
No, we don't have to cooperate, but the Egyptians are on the other side of the fence. So it will be, and we have an agreement with Egypt. Egypt is not an enemy. So we have to not to coordinate in the sense that the Egyptians can tell us what to do and not to do in the Palestinian side of the fence. In the Palestinian side of the fence, we can do whatever wherever we think it's important to do, but it should be coordinated because of our relations with Egypt, and Egypt is a very important country in the region, and that should be done together with the Egyptians, not against the will.
And if we do not coordinate with them, will it be a violation of the peace accord with Egypt?
No, as far as I remember, there is nothing in the peace accord saying that we should coordinate such an operation. There are limitations on the forces of Israel that can approach the border, and it probably including the border of Gaza and Egypt, because it's in the border of Egypt, but we don't have any plan to stay there with huge forces. At the end of the operation, we will evacuate most of the forces. I think that for the time which is needed to gain control, that the Egyptians can say that that should be coordinated. We should inform them.
General Amidror, I wanted to ask you about the issue of evacuating Palestinians from Rafah. How can Israel make sure that Hamas terrorists are not, going to move together with the Palestinian civilians if Israel decides to relocate them?
It's a very good question, and it is even more so because we know now the terrorists from the north moved with the civilians into the south, and some of them succeeded to infiltrate and to leave the north part of Gaza, and they are now in the south part of Gaza. There is no any guarantee that we can do it 100% with 100% success, and probably some terrorists will go out of the area with the civilians, and this is the Hamas principle, to be involved with the civilians and to put Israel in a situation in which it's impossible to identify who is who and to make any differentiation between the civilians and the Hamas terrorists. That's what we are saying all the time. They are using the civilians as a human shield. But at the end, even if some of them, I don't know how many, but even if some of them will use the opportunity to leave the area and to move to the south, to the center, and they will evacuate the area with the civilians, using, again, the civilians as human shield. It is something that Israel will have to understand cannot be prevented 100%. We have some means to identify in the checkpoints through which the population will move to the center. Some of the terrorists probably will be identified, but you are right, it's not a 100% process.
Does the IDF have enough forces now to carry out this operation, or it needs to recruit reservists for such a big operation in Rafah?
The IDF today has 4 efforts. One is to conclude the operation in Khan Yunis and to continue the raids in the north. For that, we have enough forces in the south. The second one is to continue arresting members of Hamas and other organizations in the West Bank. This job is done mainly by reservists, by reserve units, not all of them, but many of them. The two other efforts is one is active defense against Hezbollah. We succeeded to kill almost 200 members of Hezbollah in the last 4 months. And many regular forces are now training themselves. If will be a need to go to war in Lebanon, they should be much better prepared. They have to forget some lessons that they learned in Gaza and to enhance their capabilities based on some lessons that had been learned in Gaza. It's a combination of what we should learn and what we should change, but to be better prepared in Lebanon. And there are huge regular forces are now in a process of training in the center and north part of Israel. And this is not the same forces which are defending Israel against Hezbollah. This is the 4 efforts. And at the end, it's a logistic question where and when it will be wise to bring forces from the north or from the center to exchange them with other forces to bring them into the south. This is the headquarters of the IDF. It's very good in this logistic decisions, and all the decisions will be taken. The IDF has enough forces to continue immediately after Khan Yunis into Rafah. I'm not sure that will be the best solution because, as I said, we have to move the population to make some preparations for that. But yes, we have enough forces in the IDF.
Do you think, General Amidror, that Israel should create a buffer zone inside Gaza on the border with Israel?
No question. From the military point of view, that was one of our biggest mistakes. No barrier, what we are teaching in our schools, no barrier can secure itself. You have to secure the barrier. And the only way to secure the barrier is to build kind of no man's land in front of the barrier that no one can reach the barrier. No one can reach the fence. The fence cannot defend itself. And that was, as I said, one of our biggest mistakes. By the way, totally in the level of the professional military science, not about any decision by someone in Tel Aviv. No, professionally was a mistake, and we should fix it by building no man's land. I don't know if it will be half a kilometer, a full kilometer, or mile, I don't know. It's a tactical question that you have to have all the details about the ground, the obstacles, and so on and so forth. But kind of a no man's land as a buffer zone between the Palestinians and the fence is necessary. It will not be under Israeli sovereignty. We are not annexing 1 meter of land from Gaza. It will be Palestinian sovereignty, but no man's land.
Let's talk about the hostages, the Israeli hostages held by Hamas. What do you think now is the most effective way to put more pressure on Hamas?
I think that there are 2 efforts that should be done, or 3. One is to continue the military pressure, to go and to clean the whole area of Khan Yunis and to move on to Rafah. Only when and if Hamas feels that he doesn't have any other option, he might go to negotiate. The second effort is to negotiate. We have to continue the negotiations, and it should be done wisely. We have to be ready to pay high price, very high price, but not any price. There are some steps that Israel should not agree to, for example, to stop the war, or to retreat from Gaza, or not to visit the Temple Mountain. This is out of question. This is something that is not going to happen. But we have to continue, if we have an offer that might be a basis for negotiations, to continue the diplomatic efforts. And these are the options relating to the hostages. And there is the fourth one, which is something that we cannot make plans for. We can make all the efforts to have it, is the ability to release as many of them by special forces operation, as we did last week. but this is something that you cannot count on. You don't know how much intelligence will you be, and if it's good, will be good enough.
Do you think that Prime Minister Netanyahu took the right decision not to continue participating in the talks in Egypt about the hostage deal?
I don't know. I don't know what was on the table. I don't know what was the reaction of Hamas. I don't know what was the reaction of the other participants in the effort. So here the details is the God is in the details, and I personally don't know. I don't know I don't know the exact language of what was offered by the other side. So I don't have a view. If it is about stopping the war, retreating from Gaza, and stopping visits in the Temple Mountain, Israel should not send any delegation. There is nothing to report or to negotiate about. But if it is something which does not include these demands that cannot be accepted, I think that Israel should go and negotiate.
Would you support the release of thousands of Palestinian prisoners in return for a hostage deal with Hamas?
I think that Israel should be ready to pay a very, very high price for releasing the hostages, including prices that will cost us in life of soldiers, for example. If we are stopping for 3 months, when we'll come back to the battlefield, Hamas will be much better organized, refilling its munition and so on and so forth. And there is a price for such a move. And Israeli soldiers probably will be killed because of that. But I think this is a price that Israel should pay to release the hostages. And when it is become more and more that the price is higher and higher, there is a line, I don't know what is that line, that you say, guys, enough is enough. This price I'm not going to pay, and how many should be released for each Israeli, I don't have a good answer. It should be more than one, but not big numbers.
Do you think that Yahya Sinwar is willing, as a matter of principle, to release all the hostages, or he will always keep some of the hostages as an insurance for his life that will not be killed by Israel? Do you believe that even if Israel pays a high price, he will release all the hostages?
I don't know, and I think that Sinwar does not have any guarantee from anyone to his life he will be killed.
Are you disappointed with the failure of Israeli intelligence to locate most of the hostages?
No, because I was in the intelligence 25 years, I know to appreciate the efforts, the success in some cases, and failure is part of the intelligence life. You know that you don't know everything. In some cases, you know what you don't know. In some cases, you don't even know what you don't know. But here is a good example how going under the ground and separate yourself or separate them from the population of Gaza is having a good success from their point of view. We cannot locate all the hostages.
The IDF is very successful, or was successful, in releasing Israeli hostages that have been being held out of the tunnels in houses, in private houses. Do you think that the Israeli army can also release hostages that are being held in the tunnels themselves? Can the army operate inside the tunnels and release hostages, or outside of the tunnels only?
First of all, the IDF is within the tunnels all the time. Since the third week of the war, of the ground operation, the IDF is inside the tunnels. And today, more than in the past, because we gain a lot of experience, we have methods that we didn't have in the past. We have capabilities that we didn't have in the past, and the IDF is within the tunnels in those areas which we have control on the ground all the time. all the time, I mean, day and night, 24/7. Israeli soldiers are fighting and acting within the underground tunnel system. The question of releasing the hostages is not about, it's not just about the tunnel. No question that within the tunnel it's more complicated. The issue here is real-time intelligence. And that probably is the bottleneck, because you cannot go to such a raid without having very good information, and not from 3 months ago, but fresh. And this is the bottleneck, fresh, good intelligence about the hostages within the tunnels.
Were you surprised by the vast network of tunnels that Hamas had? Now that we see the IDF going into these tunnels, and we see all what they're fighting in these tunnels, you know.
I was not surprised by the fact that they have tunnels and they have very huge amount of tunnels. I was surprised by the sophistication of some of the tunnels and the fact that it is so deep under the ground. And I was surprised by the fact that Hamas was ready to sacrifice the standard of living of his people, the ability of his people to flourish, whatever, and they invested so much in the tunnels. That was my mistake. I didn't thought that they will invest in such a complicated system.
And before we move to talk about Lebanon, I just wanted to ask you about the so-called day after in Gaza. Do you think Israel should establish a military government, a temporary one over there, or do you think that Israel should retain security control without having a military government? Or do you think that, you know, Israel should allow the Palestinian Authority to return to Gaza? I mean, how do you see things unfolding in Gaza in the day after?
I don't see. I think that the day after will be determined by the results of the war, not vice versa, by the way. Those who claim that they need to know what will happen next to fight the present war, I think that are mistaken. We don't need a third party, which we declared will be there after the war, so we will have to take them into consideration. No. We should finish the job of destroying Hamas military capability and destroying Hamas as an organized organization. Then we will decide what is the best way to control the civilian life of Gaza. Militarily, it is clear what Israel needs. Only two things. One is the no man's land perimeter along the borders, as I described earlier. And the second one is the freedom to act inside Gaza without having any restrictions from the civilian authorities of Israel, the decision makers, and so on. So it's a military issue. We have to have the ability to act in Gaza as in Area A in the West Bank, as in Jenin, as in Halil, Hebron, or Nablus, Shechem. This is the real situation in which we have to live after the war. A situation in which we are active inside the Gaza Strip from side to side, as the same way that we are acting in the West Bank. And I have, other than the military principle of having this freedom to act and in no man's land, I think that I have another principle, which is Israel should not be responsible for Gaza. We don't have to be in a position that we have to provide policing, education, water, food, blah, 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 to Gaza. The commitment of Israel to Gaza was ended in the 7th of October.
So who should provide all this?
A good question. Why should I make the decision? I know what I don't agree that. I do not agree that it will be provided by Hamas. Tomorrow I will not agree that it will be provided by Turkey. But if it will be this kind of Palestinians, this kinds of Arab countries, this kind of people from Gaza, I don't mind. I give them free hand if my security interests will be kept.
What do you think about the idea that the Palestinian Authority, a revitalized Palestinian Authority, will control Gaza after the war?
Revitalize it, and after we will see how is the new way that the Palestinian Authority is functioning. What happened in this revitalization? What changes we will see? We will make a decision. Why should we now? Even the Americans agree that that should be changed. Okay, change it, and then we will decide.
I mean, what type of changes do you expect from the Palestinian Authority?
I didn't say about it any words. It's the Americans who said it. So let's see what the Americans will have to offer after changing the Palestinian Authority. If they succeed to do it, let's see what we have in our hands. And these are good people and good organization, not corrupted, not leading to another war in the Middle East. We'll be more than happy to support them.
Okay, now I want to move to the issue of Lebanon and Hezbollah and what's happening up in the north. I mean, do you think Israel is making a mistake by not responding or by not going to war with Hezbollah after all what has been happening?
The decision was taken, and it was a very smart decision not to open a new front in the first week of the war. There were some people in Israel that thought that it is a good opportunity. Others, including the Prime Minister, thought that it will be a mistake. And the decision was the one which was taken not to open another front. Nasrallah found himself without a business. So what he will do? He's the guy who's responsible for the Mukawama, so the resistance. So what he should do? And he decided that he doesn't want a war as well. And there are two sides, the government of Israel, Nasrallah and the Iranians, both sides decided we don't want war. So what Nasrallah did, and this is a violation of all the rules in the world, he decided to attack Israel. Not in a high level, just near the border and so on and so forth. And from then we have kind of skirmishes between the two sides. We succeeded to kill almost 200 terrorists of Hezbollah. They succeeded to destroy many buildings in Israel. We are acting mainly against the military installation and people, and they are very active against civilian settlements and buildings. And this is, from my point of view, a question that is Israel society and government will have to face, and it's much more complicated than needed than the question of the day after in Gaza. It is about what should be done that bring us back to the situation in which we can call back all the settlements which had been evacuated from the north as in the south. And Israel should consider if it's enough military capability, munition, interception, blah, 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 what is needed for such a war. Second is the question of the economy. Can the economy carry on with another war, which will take not less than half a year? The question of legitimacy in Israel and outside Israel, and the question of the capabilities of the military to do both wars in the south and in the north. And they feel that they rest enough and they can move to the second phase. But if you ask me, the most important question is, do we have enough munition and interceptors? And if the answer is yes, to consider all the other issues and to go down to and to use it. But these are the questions. What Israel should do, and this is much more important than the question of the day after in Gaza. And as I said, there are 5 elements that should be taken into into account. The most important of them is the readiness of the army with ammunition, interceptors, and so on and so forth.
Do you think that Israel should create a buffer zone also in the south of Lebanon to make sure that the Israelis who are living right near the border should not be under a threat of a massacre like happened in Gaza?
We had one, and we evacuated it many years ago, as you remember.
Yeah, of course.
I don't know. It very much depends on the consequence, the results of the diplomatic efforts, and the and if it will be a war, the results of the war. And we should be very well prepared for a war, because it might be a situation in which we don't have any other option. So I think it's too early to say what is needed. Very much depends on what will be achieved and what will be the situation on the ground.
But General Amidror, I mean, for how long can Israel tolerate this? I mean, the war
This is why I told you that this is probably much more urgent and important decision than the day after in Gaza, because of your what you just said about the population. Israel cannot retreat retreat from its demand that the border will not be held by Hezbollah, but by the Lebanese army, and Hezbollah should remain far to the north.
But why can't the IDF launch an operation to push Hezbollah back to Litani?
Because you know where you begin a war, and you have to ask yourself another question. Not if you are ready to push Hezbollah into the Litani. This is probably the answer is yes. But if Hezbollah decided for him, it doesn't have any other choice, or it's an opportunity to wage a full war against Israel. Israel is ready for a full war. I said there are 4 elements that should be taken into account, but you don't push without taking into account that it might be ended with a full war.
Are there any limitations on Israel, military-wise, because of the presidential elections in the United States, because President Biden doesn't want a regional war? Is this limiting Israel operations in the north of the border?
I think that it very much depends on the circumstances. If it will be an ordinary day, without the atrocities of 7th of October, without Hezbollah launching operations against Israel from the day 3 of the war, violating all the agreements, the international law, which had been supposed to have between two countries. Hezbollah is violating all the rules. No one complained, but we have to understand the hypocrisy of the war. It's not that we begin a war with Hezbollah. Hezbollah initiated a war against Israel, and Israel is constraining itself. We don't take all the measures which are needed. So it's a good question. Probably we have to take into consideration sensitivities of America and in America. But when it is coming to defend the interest of Israel, or the life of civilians in Israel, or the life of the soldiers of the IDF, with all due respect, the elections in America is not a good excuse not to do something because of that.
And would you be satisfied if there was a diplomatic solution to, what's happening in Lebanon between Israel and Lebanon?
Depends on the solution. I'll tell you what I told my counterpart in the White House when I was the National Security Advisor relating to Iran. Israel prefers a diplomatic solution. We are not an happy trigger guys. We prefer a diplomatic solution, but we want a good diplomatic solution. And in some cases, not having a solution is much better than a bad agreement. So it very much depends what agreement we will be shown.
And do you think Israel should step up the pressure on the Lebanese government, for example, by targeting Lebanese institutions, governmental institutions, and things like that in order to put pressure on Hezbollah?
The problem is that it is, again, it's a very good idea for the studio or the academia. It doesn't work. The government in Beirut cannot put pressure on Hezbollah in some of the most important occasions and needs. Again, it will defend much better the population of South Lebanon, but if Hezbollah is against it, it will not work.
What do you think about the new plan of President Biden, of the new doctrine of President Biden creating a new axis, more moderate axis to balance the Iranian influence in the Middle East, and the idea of normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia in exchange for Israel approval of a Palestinian state? What do you think about this idea? Isn't it just giving a prize to terrorism?
It's two different questions. One is about the attitude of the Americans towards Iran, and the other one is towards the Palestinians. It's not just that it is a prize for I mean, you butchered Israelis, so you get a state. I think it's more problematic than that. I don't see that too many Israelis are trusting the Palestinians today. Can the Americans guarantee that the first elections after the establishing of the state will not bring Hamas to the government? Maybe as prime minister, the leader of Hamas will be the president of the Palestinian Authority. Can the Americans guarantee us that will not be the question? Remember that the Americans put pressure on us to make elections in 2006, if I'm not mistaken. We told them, don't do it, because Hamas will win, and they said, don't worry. We know what we do. Hamas won. So, and then expelled the Fatah from Gaza. So if someone cannot guarantee in a way that can be trusted by Israel that the government of the Palestinian Authority will not be controlled by Hamas, no one in Israel will agree to such a state, to such an offer. It's not, by the way, I don't believe that leaders which are not Bibi Netanyahu will agree.
What about the idea of a demilitarized Palestinian state? Would you agree to one like that?
No question, but we should do the demilitarization. Otherwise, it will not work. We have to find all the weapon systems and to destroy all. It's mission impossible. But yes, it should be a neutralized country. But how you do it? You know, there is a joke that someone came to the commander of the IDF and said, I have a solution for all the navies which might take us. I said, well, okay, very interesting. What is the solution? He said, we will burn the Mediterranean and all the ships will burn with the Mediterranean. The Prime Minister said, fantastic idea. How you do it? He said, no, I have the idea how to do it. You have to ask the engineers. So all those who are speaking with me about moderate Palestinian Authority, about changing the regime, about whatever, it's a good idea. Bring the engineer which knows how to do it. I don't know how to do it. I don't believe that it can be achieved.
Can Israel agree for a Palestinian port in Gaza for a Palestinian
goods
airport to have their own access to the world, to the outside, without Israeli supervision?
I think that one day it might come that it will be logic. Today, when we know that terror organizations try to build military capability in Gaza and will be more than ready to do it after the war, and that should be prevented. I think it's too early, but in principle, they should have an airport. Not now.
Yes, at the time of Arafat, they had a small airport in Gaza and they were smuggling weapons.
I was there, and Arafat built such rich room for himself when he is in the airport that it is unbelievable, unbelievable. You know, little pieces of materials that he brought from Morocco and from the Gulf, and it was marvelous rooms, kind of a suite for himself. So I met him there, and I almost asked him, "Where do you have all the money to build such a room?" But I knew that he will not tell me the truth anyhow, so I didn't ask. But it was very, very, very expensive suite for Mr. Arafat.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank you, Major General retired Yaakov Amidror, for sharing with us your insights and your analysis. And I'd also like to thank my colleague and dear friend and veteran journalist and analyst, Yoni Ben Menachem.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with
Thank
us
you
today.
for
And
the
I'd like to
opportunity. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd also
Thank
like to
you.
thank all the JCPA friends who have been with us since the beginning of the War Room briefing, and hope to see you early next week. Thank you very much to everyone.
Thank you very much, and have a good